All right, today we're breaking down a really powerful story. It's about a son who was publicly shamed by his own family, but who went on to build an empire in total silence. This whole thing starts with a humiliating insult. And believe me, it ends with a complete, total reversal of power, all built one clean floor and one purchased property at a time.
So just imagine this for a second. It's Thanksgiving dinner. You're 22 years old, you're working your tail off as a janitor, saving every single dime, and your own father, he stands up, raises a glass, and delivers that line as a toast aimed right at you. Well, that's exactly what happened to a guy named Caleb. In front of everyone, his father toasted to his other kids' success, using Caleb's job as the punchline. Just brutal.
And here you can really see the massive disconnect in Caleb's life. See, while his family saw him as a failure, the guy mopping floors, he was quietly playing the long game. That janitor job, it wasn't his life, it was his funding. Every single paycheck went straight into a savings account that he treated like sacred ground. It was all part of a bigger vision they never even bothered to ask him about.
And you can see just how well that quiet strategy worked out for him. While his family was busy making jokes, Caleb was building. By 26, he bought his first property, a total fixer-upper. He renovated himself. By the time he was 30, he owned 3 whole buildings. And just a couple of years after that, he's running his own property management company. It was this slow, methodical climb, literally built on the very work his family mocked. So for years, this was just how it was. Every family get-together, Caleb had to listen to these little jabs from his dad and his supposedly successful older brother, Mason. Still mopping floors, Caleb? Or, hey, not everyone wants the stress of a real career. They just treated his life like it was some kind of permanent failure, never once suspecting that the quiet guy in the corner was becoming a property magnate.
So this all leads us to the breaking point, a big confrontation at a birthday dinner. The scene is this fancy restaurant for his sister Leah's 35th birthday. And like clockwork, the family starts in on their favorite tradition of, belittling Caleb. But this time, after his father raises a glass to his still underemployed son, Caleb just decides he's had enough.
But here's the thing. He doesn't get angry. Instead, Caleb calmly stands up and just lays out the facts. He reveals his success, not with any kind of arrogance, but with this quiet detachment that's honestly way more powerful than any shouting match. He tells them, straight up, he never shared his success because he just didn't need their validation. Then, he simply puts his napkin on the table and walks out, leaving his entire family sitting there, stunned into absolute silence. Now, you'd think that would be the big climax, right? But the story actually takes a much darker turn. Caleb's father goes from just being disrespectful to outright sabotage. Only 2 weeks after that dinner, Caleb found out that all those years of insults had escalated into something way worse, an active attack on his business.
So Caleb, being Caleb, methodically pieced it all together. First, a bunch of weird equipment failures start happening. Then, he gets an alert from his bank. That leads him to check his company's software logs, and sure enough, there's an unauthorized remote login. And the final blow? The IP address was unmistakable. The sabotage was coming from inside his own family. When Caleb confronted his father, the excuse was just breathtaking. His dad didn't even deny it. Instead, he tried to frame it as help, a test of Caleb's supposedly sloppy systems. He actually claimed he was trying to show Caleb the cracks, so he would finally let an experienced person, meaning his father, take over. I mean, it was the ultimate act of disrespect, all disguised as fatherly advice.
And after that, Caleb was just done. He didn't argue, he didn't yell, he just walked away and cut his father out of his life. Completely. For the next 2 years, he poured every ounce of his energy into his work, not with anger, but with this cold intention. He upgraded his security, rebuilt his systems, and just kept expanding his empire, buying a 4th and then a 5th property.
And then, 2 years later, comes the reckoning. One snowy morning, Caleb's assistant tells him there's a job seeker outside. And who is it? It's his father. Turns out, he'd been let go from his company and had been jobless for months. Defeated, humbled, he was standing outside the glass doors of the very empire he once tried to undermine.
So this really raises a huge question, right? Faced with this ultimate role reversal, what do you do? What does Caleb do? This wasn't about forgiveness for him. This was about strategy. He wasn't interested in some kind of petty revenge. He wanted something more lasting, a lesson his father could never, ever ignore.
Caleb doesn't offer him a management job. He doesn't offer him a handout. He offers him a mirror. The position is for an entry-level property inspector. We're talking field work, clipboards, routine checks. It's a contract position with absolutely zero access to sensitive systems and full digital monitoring. Oh, and before he can even start, he has to sign a legal document acknowledging his past sabotage.
And that's the key, right there. This offer, It wasn't an act of grace, it was a carefully constructed reality check. Every single building his father inspected, every QR code he scanned, was a physical reminder of the empire his son built not just without him, but in spite of him. The man who mocked janitors was now, for all intents and purposes, doing janitor-level work for his own son.
But Caleb didn't stop with his father. To truly reclaim his own story, he had to establish a whole new order. He systematically started reshaping the entire family power dynamic. It was time to show everyone who really held the influence.
His approach was, well, methodical. He offered his brother's financial firm a contract, turning Mason from the successful older brother into his subordinate, a vendor. He made a huge, very public donation to his sister's kids' private school, putting his company name where she couldn't possibly ignore it. These weren't aggressive moves, but quiet, strategic ones that completely rewrote the family's financial and social map.
And the final act? It takes place, so fittingly, at a new Thanksgiving, where Caleb delivers what's called the builder's toast. This time, he's the host. He is at the head of the table, in his own home, surrounded by the family that once dismissed him. The power dynamic has completely flipped, and he stands up to deliver a toast of his own.
With those words, Caleb doesn't just make a toast. He delivers a verdict. It's this quiet, powerful statement aimed at every single person in that room. He reclaims the entire narrative of success, honoring the quiet builders and calling out the ones who failed to see what was right in front of them. The silence that followed was absolute. The story wraps up not with some big, dramatic confrontation, but with a quiet admission. Sometime later, these were the last words his father ever spoke to him. It wasn't an apology filled with excuses, but just a simple final acknowledgement of the truth. Caleb had become so undeniably successful that even his biggest critic had no choice but to finally see it.
And that really leaves us with a final thought, doesn't it? Caleb's story suggests that maybe the most profound form of justice isn't about making your enemies suffer. It's about building a reality so undeniable that your detractors are forced to live with the truth of who you are and what you've actually accomplished. It's not about revenge, it's about reclamation.